I just wanted to start by talking about, where focus is today and some of the things that we've been doing for a long time versus some of the things that we are starting to do with our customers. So I think most folks would agree that the world has become very data-centric, right? Data is now a commodity, and typically in the IT business, when we hear commodity, we think something negative, right? In this case, it's actually a positive. So what it means is that there's now value in that data, monetary value. So, while we know the bad guys have been always trying to get at our data, and we're trying to keep them out, now people are actually sharing data, they're selling data, there are data exchanges being stood up all around the world. And that data is allowing us to do more, right? It's allowing businesses to get competitive advantage. It's allowing, healthcare organizations to do things like, for example, find vaccines or treatments for coronavirus, right? So data is at the core of everything we do. And our goal is to make sure all of our customers can be data-driven. So we do that through 4 pillars. The store pillar, which is, think of that as your typical infrastructure pillar. So whether that's, products like we're talking about today, because that's where we're largely going to stay today, is within that store pillar. Whether we're talking about landing that on-prem, or we're talking about moving that to a public cloud, how we're going to back up, store that data, that all sits in that store pillar. The next pillar that we have is actually the secure pillar, and that's where we have to make sure that all those things that we work on are secure. Right, especially nowadays with most people going to remote scenarios, the remote office workers, we want to make sure that those people are secure and all the assets that sit back in the data center or in the public cloud are secure as well. We are a managed services firm as well, and so we do some fully managed for a handful of clients, and we also have managed point solutions. For example, we have our new secure managed offering, which is managed firewalls with governance that comes along with that. So for folks that are struggling with compliance, struggling with making sure that they have a good security posture, that firewall offering comes along with that by default. And then finally, the new space we've been venturing into, which is our transform practice. And this is really about once we've stored the data, once we've secured all those assets, and whether we are or are not helping to manage that stuff, it's now time to get the true power out of that data, right? So that could be looking at data warehousing. That could be looking at business intelligence or any kind of analytics type projects. Some of our partners in this space are people like Snowflake, Tableau, et cetera. So we're really trying to help our customers do more with the data they have. So, as I mentioned, we're going to focus on 3 products today. We're going to first talk about PowerMax. That's the enterprise storage. Simple, powerful, and trusted. We're going to talk about PowerStore. That's the mid-range, although some will argue that it's creeping up into the enterprise storage market as well. And that is a data-centric, intelligent, and adaptable product. And then finally, we'll talk about the PowerScale, which is for unstructured data, which is, believe it or not, about 80% of the data in the world is actually unstructured. So how do we actually handle that? That's simplicity at scale. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Michael Godfrey, and he's going to walk through the PowerMax. Right, Michael?
Thank you, Larry. And as Larry mentioned, if you guys want deep dives on any of this stuff, I really only have about 10 minutes, a little less to talk about this, so please contact us so we can take you through it. I'm just going to keep it very high level. So the PowerMax, it was announced in May of 2018. And since then, it's kind of grown like wildfire. It's extremely, extremely powerful. Up there on the screen, you see those 3 pillars. It's powerful architecture, simple operation, trusted innovation. From a powerful architecture standpoint, it's a multi-controller. You can actually start as low as 13 terabytes and scale up to 4 petabytes. And that's 4 petabytes just in 2 racks, which, take a look at what that was just 2 years ago. It would have taken 8 racks to try and accomplish that. So you can expand that on demand too. If you want to grow, you can do that 100% without downtime, without affecting any type of availability. Everything is fully redundant. There's fault isolation, so if there is a potential problem, your application is going to still running without any type of compromise. And then it's non-disruptive software upgrades. Everyone has that, but what's impressive about the PowerMax is that it actually upgrades per brick. It's less than a minute upgrade per brick, and it's extremely, extremely quick to do these upgrades. And and because they're so big and the data can move so quickly elsewhere, there's no downtime. So these upgrades, they can happen almost instantaneously. You don't even notice them. Then it supports end-to-end NVMe. When it first came out, it was NVMeable Fabric ready, but now that that's more prevalent, that's available now, and you can start buying NVMe fabrics to support that protocol that's supported. All the NVMe drives that are in there are dual ported, so you get extra reliability and more performance. And then it supports storage class memory. And so, what that's going to do is if you think about what SSD did to spinning disks and the speed improvements you're going to get there, that's what SCM is going to do to flash. Those are the speed improvements. You're going to get global inline dedupe. The average out there is about 3 to 1. We've actually seen 5 to 1. The previous versions of the PowerMaxes, known as the VMaxes, they didn't have inline dedupe. They just had compression. So it's some new stuff there. And you can also pick and choose which volumes you want to turn compression and dedupe on. So that way you're not spinning cycles on trying to compress in, say, images, for example, and you don't want to be wasting CPU cycles when you're really not going to be getting too much of a benefit there. So, and then it provides 6 nines of availability. So from a downtime perspective, it's virtually unheard of. Your apps are going to stay up, incredibly well. So simple operation, you can consolidate everything down into a single array. It's extremely flexible. So you have your traditional apps like your relational databases, your EMRs, your ERPs, your VMs, and then you also have your apps of tomorrow, your next gen apps, the real-time analytics, the genomics, the Internet of Things, AI, mobile apps. It's a simple GUI. If you've used any type of the Unispheres, from the past few years, it's something that's extremely easy to recognize, and you really don't need much instruction to get it going. So it's extremely simple. You can consolidate all that down into just a single storage array. And then trusted innovation. So it's actually doing behind the scenes, and it's constantly talking back to Dell EMC's storage. You get this 40 million analysis data sets that it's analyzing in real time. And that's helped driving like about 6 billion decisions a day to maximize performance. So for example, it's recognizing, how to Oracle databases perform maybe with, with an EMR system. And it'll say, oh, you know what, this kind of data, when we see this kind of a query come in, is the kind of data that's going to be fetched, quickly put that stuff out into your cache. So that way you can still, get your second latency extremely quickly. And then, so it is the world's fastest storage array. You're getting up to 15 million IOPS, which is incredible, 350 gigabytes per second, absolutely phenomenal. And it's 50% better response times. And that's actually compared to a fully loaded VMAX 950. So if you think about, what the old VMAXs were just 2 years ago, and, fully loaded solid state drives, you're actually getting with a PowerMax, you're getting 50% better response times. And you're getting 3x the performance density. So you'll be able to shrink this thing down. So, a lot of people, when they think of these old VMAXs and PowerMaxes, you heard the term, big iron and, taking up all these floor tiles. You don't have that anymore. And you're going to see that in the next couple of slides. We're going to show you that in a little, how people have been able to shrunk down and get so much more improvement, and a lot of cost savings. So a lot of great things there. There's some things there, 7.5 million IOPS per floor tile, and then, really it's 187K IOPS per U, if you want to think about it, if you want to start doing those calculations, how much IOPS you're getting, per rack unit. So just a quick couple examples here. So we have a healthcare or insurance customer, and they were looking at what they have is during the open enrollment time, they have hundreds of thousands of people that need to log on and make their selections for their open enrollment. And so what this organization needed to do is they needed to find a way to improve the response times during that time where they had this massive exponential usage. And so that's where they look for PowerMax. And so in the past, they had multiple VMAXs, and now they're going with the PowerMax 8Ks. And so one of the slides we put together to show them, what they're getting and how much of an improvement they're getting is just what they used to have in 5 floor tiles. Now they're getting in almost 1.5 floor tiles, and so it's a 51% decrease in power cooling floor space. There's less weight, if you care about your weight on your floor tiles. Just less power, less cooling. So there's a tremendous amount of things you're going to be able to get in there, and they're getting 2 to 3x the performance improvement is what they're seeing. So they're extremely happy with the way it's going, and they're going to continue to purchase more of those. And then when SCM comes out, they can start throwing those drives in there when they start getting to a more reasonable price and still get even better performance. So. And the next example here is it's a manufacturing customer of ours. They actually, they had VMAXs, they had Extreme IOs, and they had VPlex, working multiple sites, and it came time for them to do a refresh, and they looked at the entry-level PowerMax, which is just, if you look here in this picture here, it's a half rack. And they're getting like 5x the performance improvement. And then all the features that you get with VPlex now, you're getting in your PowerMax. You get SRDF Metro, for example. You can do all that active data centers, and distance really isn't a factor anymore. You can go any distance now. And this customer, they reduced the amount of floor tile space they had to worry about. And so now they're just down from their storage standpoint, which was taken up. Now that's just 3 racks of the VMAX, but there was a couple more. There's a whole rack for the VPlexes, and then there's a whole other rack for the Extreme IOs. Now they're just down to just a half rack, and so just the amount of savings they're getting just in power and cooling alone is, it's almost going to pay for these things. So extremely happy. So
thanks.
Yep.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. So that is the PowerMax. That is the top of the line enterprise storage device in the Power family. Now we're going to move to the mid-range, although some would argue that it's actually mid-range / enterprise storage as well now. And we're going to talk a little bit about the new PowerStore. So you've probably heard a lot about the PowerStore. It's a pretty big launch for the Dell EMC folks. It is a great platform. And it's really designed for the data era. So just like I talked about how Focus is helping our customers to be data-driven, right? This platform is really designed for a multitude of different use cases. So it is data-centric, it's intelligent, and it's adaptable. And we'll dive into what all these things mean. But it is a programmable infrastructure if that's what you're doing, right? If you're using products like Ansible, et cetera, right? If you're writing to your REST APIs, then this product is the right product for you. It is an autonomous appliance, meaning that there are functionalities built in that will now automate using machine learning some of the things that common administrative tasks, right? Things that that is we often refer to as the meh work, right? The stuff that has to be done, but there's nothing exciting about it, right? And so if we can actually have the array worry about that stuff, then that would be fantastic. And of course, proactive health analytics, just like Mike referenced on the PowerMax, how it sends data back. They can go through that and understand what the device is doing. Same kind of thing here. You can actually make decisions based on larger sums of data than simply what's happening to your array in a bubble. And by the way, as we mentioned before, if you have any questions, please pop them into the chat, and we'll be happy to answer them as we go. So just like the PowerMax, the power in this platform allows it to really handle any workload, whether we're talking about traditional workloads, whether we're talking about more modern workloads, we can do them all. And we'll talk about some of the cool features in a couple minutes, but we're at the point now where you can literally run virtual machines directly off of the PowerStore, right? And we'll talk about some use cases of where that's important. But if you believe in fiber channel, if you believe in iSCSI, and sometimes that's religion, right? It's not necessarily technology becomes religion with people. Doesn't matter. We can support either protocol, MVLE over fiber, as well as file-based stuff, so NFS or CIFS-based data. So regardless of what you want to do there, including containers, you can run that on this platform. I used to refer to this, the former device as the Swiss Army knife, and now this has just made that even more apparent. So when we talk about some of those high-end features, well, how about 6 nines in a mid-range product, right? That's really what PowerStore is providing here, right? Active data paths, data migration built into the box, easy capacity expansions. Just like Mike talked about the easy use around upgrading the PowerMax, that same functionality is here in the PowerStore, really simple hardware and software upgrades. And all the resiliency you would expect from a Dell EMC product. Redundant components, dual ported NVMe drives, fast rebuild times when we're thinking about RAID, and of course, cluster HA. And then in terms of data protection, a dynamic RAID is available, and then there is native replication, often referred to as snapshots or cloning type stuff, local protection there, and then of course there's the Dell data protection portfolio to help as well. And of course, this used to be everybody's favorite. It's not talked about as much nowadays, but it certainly gets talked about once we go to deployment and people start seeing real-world dedupe rates. But there's a guaranteed 4-to-1 data reduction. So there's a paper that outlines what the requirements are. But in essence, it's going to guarantee you 4-to-1 data reduction on average across your enterprise. So as you put a bunch of data on this device, you're guaranteed to get that much reduction. Individual applications we've seen anywhere from 20-to-1 reduction.
VDI.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, VDI is a perfect example of that. Yep, good one. So there's lots of opportunities to store lots of data without taking up lots of space. And that's built into the box. I talked a little bit about the program infrastructure stuff a minute ago, but as you can see now, whether you are investing in the VMware suite, whether you're investing in containers, whether you're looking at Ansible, or whether you just want open APIs, REST APIs to program to your box, all of these things exist here in the PowerStore. So you can automate storage provisioning, you can deploy new resources in really, really small amounts of time, and more importantly, right, the big thing about automation is we actually get to eliminate risk, right? When we look at environments, when we get calls from customers that are in trouble and we dispatch resources, it's often manual tasks that take people down, right? So to be able to automate things, test those things, and leverage those things moving forward really helps organizations to eliminate risk and to keep those devices running. So when we think about the flexibility of the PowerStore, let's talk a little bit about the edge, right? So because there's a relatively small form factor, a couple U, right, we're going to save a ton of space. It is a very high powered box if you want it to be. When Rags in a couple minutes does the demo, he'll show you what our configuration looks like. But I believe it was Mike that said when we were racking and stacking it, he was like, I've never seen this much power in 2U. It's insane.
I actually thought, I thought it was kind of cool just when I was holding it, just taking a look at the 2U and just all NVMe SSD drives, and then actually true NVMe cache drives, the last 4 drives, and just the amount of IOPS that you can drive out of the thing just in 2U is phenomenal. Just the 25 gigabit ports off the back, 32 gigabit FC ports. It's just it flies. It screams.
So you think about all that performance, and then you think about some of the new functionality. In this case, apps on technology, right? You can literally run the virtual machines on the array itself. So you don't need to have a physical server, right? You don't have servers attached to some kind of a fabric. You can literally run the VMs right off of this machine. So that makes it a great potential for the edge, right? Where you can have all the streaming data coming in, and it's going directly to one device, not going to a server, etc. So that's going to save you space. It's going to save you money, right? And it allows you to do more at the edge than maybe you were able to do before. Now, you can also easily move that data from the edge back to the core, right? And we can run those apps on the core as well. So that gives us a lot of flexibility. And then if we bounce back into the core, within the core, you've got options here too. With VMware as that data center operating system, you can run those apps directly on the PowerStore. You can migrate those apps off and onto an ESX server using more traditional server hardware, or you can migrate them to an HCI device, in this case a VxRail. And all that movement can be done through VMware, and it makes it very easy and very seamless to bounce workloads around. So maybe you have in your data center some workloads at certain times of day, like Mike was talking about running reports, or he was talking about in the healthcare space, open enrollment, lots of users logging in. Maybe there's a reason certain times of the year to actually have those VMs run directly on the storage array, right, where they have direct access to all that power. And maybe when that time is done, you move them back to a traditional storage and you free up those resources, right? That's the kind of flexibility that you get with this platform. Very, very powerful. And then, of course, if you couple it with VCF or VMware's Cloud Foundations, then you truly can build a private cloud, and that private cloud will allow you to burst out, if you want to the public cloud. So VMware on AWS, VMware on Azure, right? VMware on GCP, right? The opportunity to now drive true hybrid cloud is in your hands when you couple those technologies together.
Right, and one of the things with the PowerStore is kind of nice is you truly get not just scale up, but you get scale out. So whereas your traditional Unities or even people still running VNXs, they're used to just 2 service processors, SPA, SPB. Now you can get, if you take your PowerStore and you have an appliance with node 1, node 2 in it, Now you want to throw another appliance in there, great, you get nodes 3 and nodes 4. So it's more akin to what one of the old VMAXs and PowerMaxes look like now, but in the mid-range space.
Absolutely, and that's just one of the things that make this an adaptable architecture, right? The ability to scale up and scale out, the ability to never have to migrate again, right? Continuous innovation, and I'll couple that with the new anytime upgrade stuff, and you've got a pretty powerful story there. So for those of you who don't know, anytime upgrades basically means when you purchase the PowerStore and you say, I want it to include anytime upgrades, as part of that agreement, well, that's a 3-year, 4-year, 5-year, you get to determine what the term of that maintenance is, right? You get to upgrade the box at no cost. So that can be one of two things, or actually it's 3 methods, but within the box is 1 of 2 things. One is you can go within family, right? So for example, you buy the box, your business is taken off, right, and you go, oh crap, the box was the right box to have 3 months ago or 6 months ago, but now with all this new business, right, it may be a little bit underpowered. You can actually go from 1,000 to a 3,000, for example, for free, right? It's covered under this Anytime Upgrades program. Maybe you bought it, and within that 3-year, or 4-year, or 5-year term, a new version of PowerStore comes out, right? Instead of 1,000, 3,000, we'll say 2,000, 4,000, right? You can actually move to those controllers as part of this program. Or maybe you actually want to have a second cluster of PowerStore. Well, the first 2 are completely free, included in the agreement. The third one, you'll be able to purchase a second PowerStore at a discounted rate, and I believe it can be 27 some odd %. So you get a built-in discount if you do have to buy a second PowerStore. So to Mike's point, very, very adaptable architecture in terms of the ability to scale up or scale out, and then when you factor in this anytime upgrade, it really gives you true investment protection, right? So you won't get caught with the old, you come home with the TV and you're like, woohoo, I got the latest and greatest television, then you turn it on and there's a commercial for the latest and greatest television. You're now one model behind. Well, with this program, you can literally replace the television and get the new one free of charge. So very, very cool program. It's going to help a lot of people. All right, with that, I'm now going to hand the ball over to Rags, and Rags is going to actually walk us through what the new GUI looks like.
And this is the PowerStore that's actually running in our lab right now, right down the hall from us.
Perfect. Thank you, Ellie. Thank you, Mike. You guys are able to see my screen?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, excellent. Mike and Ellie both spoke about a lot of features, right? One of the biggest features that I think of is the apps on, right? That's the biggest feature. There are 2 different models within the PowerStore. There is the X and there is a T. The X is the one which has the apps on. What does the apps on do is you can run the virtual machines like LB mentioned, which is a great use case for most of the robo offices. You don't have to invest on your servers at all. You can, if you have like 15, 20 VMs just needed for your DR location or a robo location, you can use the PowerStore X model, which is a great use case. And we spoke about NVMe flash and the SCM support, which is a great use case for most of the customers with the current workload and whatnot for healthcare customers. Scale up and scale out, you can have one cluster and you can have multiple instances running at the same single pane of glass, yep. which is great for most of the administrators. You don't have to manage 5 different interfaces. All you have to do is just manage one single interface and have 5 different storage arrays under a single pane of glass. And as of today, the replication is just asynchronous only. There is no synchronous replication that you can do between 2 storage arrays, but asynchronous is possible.
Not all that uncommon, right?
Yeah.
Typically, we see manufacturers roll out their products, and not every single bell and whistle is there on day one, and they follow shortly behind.
Sure. Absolutely.
I'm sure the same will be true in this case for sync versus async.
Yep. Sure. Yep. And it is unified. When I say unified, it is block and file under the same storage array. You can manage your block data and you can manage your file data. When I say file data, it's ZIPs and NFS. That's under a single storage array. Like when Mike mentioned, it's all under 2U. So
it really is truly unified. Not that you would, but you can if you really wanted to. You can do iSCSI and CIFS and NFS out of the same physical port. So it's pretty impressive.
Yep. So that being said, we all spoke about a lot of the features, and this is the box that's running in our office, and let's dive into it, right? So this is the GUI that you guys are going to get if you end up purchasing this. So you can see in the dashboard, you can see the overview, you can see the capacity, you can see the performance matrix as well. And in the overview, like I mentioned, there's a block and file. You can see the volume groups, the number of volumes that you have carved out, and the hosts that are attached to it. As of now, we have about 5 hosts that are attached to the PowerStore, and we just have just one volume that's created. We haven't really configured much on the file side of the host, but all the SMB shares, the CIFs, and the NFS that can be configured under the file section. Let's go into the settings and want to dive into the IPs. This is the thing that we would do when we try to initialize, right? We would go into a customer site and ask, how many IPs do we need here? So we need just 4 IP addresses. So the management cluster IP is the IP that can manage multiple appliances. You can manage up to 4 appliances under a single management cluster. So you need an IP for management cluster, you need an IP for appliance, and each IP for your node A and node B. Pretty straightforward. Just 4 IPs and you're good to go. And if you want to do your iSCSI storage, and you need 3 more IPs, that's just for the front-end connectivity, right? You need a discovery IP, and you need an iSCSI target for A and B.
Yeah, and for the technical folks, it's pretty nice just having that the discovery IP for iSCSI. That's you only type in one IP address on your ESXi host, and it'll discover all the different IPs that you've set up for static targets.
Yep. Thank you, Mike. And the next step, there are a lot of other things, we can run through it, like LB mentioned, and if you guys want to dive into it, we can do like a live demo, or if you want to do like a POC, we'll be happy to run through all that.
Yeah.
One of the things that I want to show here is under the compute section, where you can integrate your PowerStore with your vCenter, right? If you have a VMware infrastructure, you can straight away come in here, go into the vCenter connection, and like you see here, we have integrated our lab vCenter into the PowerStore. So it's ready to go. It's just a click of a button. All you need is the IP address of your vCenter, username and password, boom, ready to go. And by doing that, you can also manage all the virtual machines that are part of your vCenter through PowerStore GUI as well. Yeah. And one of the biggest thing, we all have been working on the Dell EMC portfolio from a long time. We can all create volumes, we can all create storage containers, storage groups. But one thing that I see is the volume groups, right? It's different. If you want to provision 15 volumes into, let's say, a VMware farm, all you need to do is just create a volume group, put all the volumes into it, and it's a click of a button. You can provision all the storage into the VMware farm. You can have up to as many as ESXi hosts as you want.
And same thing with host groups too. So you can group hosts together, so you can quickly add a volume to multiple hosts at the same time, and vice versa. So.
Yep. And the last section that I have is the hardware section, right? I think this is where most of you are interested in. So it gives you a good overview of how your capacity is, performance if you want to talk about, and the number of ports and the hardware. I think in the beginning, I think LV spoke about the dedupe ratio, right? You can see what is the logical storage that's used, what is the physical storage that's used, and what is the data reduction that you are getting right now. So that it varies from data to data, right? Each customer has a different amount of data or different kind of data, so the data reduction would vary. But 4 to 1 is pretty industry standard. It can go up to 20 to 1 as well.
Right, and this is just 2 Windows VMs that are on this box right now. It's just got up and running very recently, so we haven't put too much of a workload on it, but you can imagine that that's where you're getting with just 2 VMs. Once you put 200 VMs on it, what those numbers would look like.
Yep, thank you, Mike. And when it comes to the physical port itself, if you see the port 0 and port 1, it always needs to be in a LSCP configuration, or it needs to be bonded. So this can get connected to your Dell top-of-the-rack switches, or if you do not want the top-of-the-rack switches, it can go directly into your core switches. Just that the requirement is they need to be in a LSCP configuration, both for node A and node B. And you can also use the same ports for your iSCSI configuration as well. You can create iSCSI A on the node A and iSCSI B on your node B as well. And you can see the number of drives. I mean, these are the 24 drives that we have been talking from a long time now, right? 0 through 21 is all the NVMe SSD drives. Those are used for your data. But starting the 21st drive, those are the ones which are NVMe NVRAM drives, which are used for your caching purpose. So those are per node and per appliance, I should say. Those are dedicated only for caching purpose.
Yeah, and it's just a single pool, so you no longer have to worry about different types of RAID groups or dedicating storage or different drives to different types of applications. It's just a single pool. So it's extremely easy to manage, and then it also has an adaptable hot spare policy. So it's going to keep the amount of space available so that if a drive fails, it's going to make sure that it can spread the rest of that drive's workload out across the other remaining drives in the system.
Yeah, and we all come from a background saying that storage pools. Just that the naming convention in the PowerStore is a little different. They just call it as a storage containers. Yeah. But it's all the same.
Yep.
And to Mike's point earlier, think about the horsepower in 2U right there.
Yeah, just NVMe SSD drives, NVMe NVRAM drives.
Yeah, that's pretty much it from my side. Again, I like to reiterate, and if you guys want to do a one-on-one demo or a POC with us, reach out to us, and we'll be happy to run through with you guys. All right?
Yeah.
Thanks, Rags.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right. So we've now covered PowerMax at the high end. We've covered PowerStore in the mid-range, creeping up into the high end, if you ask me. And now we're going to go into the Dell EMC PowerScale, which is a little bit different solution, really designed for unstructured data. So, regardless of what industry you're in, there's lots and lots of unstructured data being created. It's never more true than when you look at some of these, energy, manufacturing, life sciences, media and entertainment, FinServe, as well as the engineering design folks. They're creating lots of content that is not database content, right? They're files of all different types, home directories, sensor data when you think about IoT stuff, right? And of course, all the AI, ML stuff is being created as well. So those things create a different kind of challenge when you think about managing that data at scale, right? So, first of all, the sheer quantity, right? 80%, I think I referenced this earlier, but 80% of the world's data is actually unstructured, meaning it's not organized, right? It's not, being controlled or queried in some kind of a database format. That growth continues just an absolute torrid streak, right? So, 3x expected to triple from 2019 to 2024. It just continues to grow. It continues to be a challenge for customers to manage the sheer amount of data. And of course, locality. So you may hear lots of folks, us, as well as our manufacturing partners, talk about the edge, right? And how, so much data is being created at the edge. Well, COVID just made the edge even bigger, right? Because everybody all of a sudden started working from home, so those all become edge devices too, right? There are places where content's being created that is not at the core or in the traditional data center. So locality of data is a big issue, as 50% of it is actually outside of the data center. So how do we tackle this, right? This is why the formerly ISILON and now PowerScale family exists, right? Because you can now handle data growth without complexity, right? You don't have to worry about managing disks or volumes or all this stuff, right? You don't have to worry about, how am I going to scale up or scale out like you do with some of the other platforms. It can grow exponentially, and based on the different form factors and the way the data can move around, you can actually have devices in different places, so the data can actually come in from different points, right? And this is not new, as I mentioned, right? EMC's been in this space for a long time with their ISILON platform. It is the #1 scale-out NAS platform per IDC, Magic Quadrant leader 4 years in a row per Gartner, if you're a Gartner Magic Quadrant person. And you see them across all these different spaces. I won't read all the stuff to you, but they're most places where unstructured data resides, ISILON has been playing in the past. So now, with the PowerScale, we take two leading platforms, the OneFS operating environment from the formerly ISILON product, and the PowerEdge server components from the Dell portfolio. We merge those two things together, and you get the best of both worlds. You now get the latest and greatest OneFS software running on top of the #1 server platform in the world, and how can you not like two number ones? When they come together, you get simplicity at scale, you get any data anywhere, and you get intelligent insight, which is an important one that we'll talk about briefly towards the end of this, right? With all this data, you have to be able to manage that simply, right? And you can't do that without software. So we'll talk a little about data IQ and what it can do for us. So when we talk about simplicity at scale, like Mike referenced with the PowerMax, the ability for it to start small and grow, you have the same functionality here, right? So you can start out with 7 terabytes. I know some of you are probably going 7 terabytes, when is 7 terabytes small? But nowadays, you know, it's small.
Drives are 20 terabytes big.
Exactly. So we can scale to multi-petabytes. So we can handle any scale. You can handle single nodes. You can handle clusters of nodes, and we'll talk about that in a couple of minutes. It's resilient. It can handle multi-node failures without losing data, right? So when you think about some of these big clusters, right, and these clusters being in place for a long time, if a node fails, you don't want to lose that data, right? So, you know, it's very important that you have that. The no node left behind stuff, right, non-disruptive tech upgrades. You can very easily add nodes. If you're familiar with the Dell EMC portfolio, you've probably seen demos in the past of ISILON where somebody walks out, plugs in the nodes, and boom, they show up, everything's working. Same kind of stuff here, right? You don't need to be a storage head to be able to manage an ISILON array, right, or a PowerScale array. They've made it really, really simple, and that's why it's so popular in a lot of those verticals you referenced earlier, because those folks don't often have IT teams managing those environments, right? It's very efficient. Inline data reduction, automated tiering, which is important because the nodes all have different models, different performance, different capacity, right? And auto balancing. So, you know, it's going to move data around, just like the PowerStore can do. It's going to move data around, you know, based on, you know, how the different nodes in the system are working, and make sure that you're getting all the benefits of the performance there. And like all good products nowadays, it is DevOps ready. We talked about programmable infrastructure a minute ago, right? Same story here, right? So Kubernetes, OpenShift integrations, right? The platform is ready to handle those DevOps environments if you so choose to deploy it there. Any client, we don't care about operating systems, right? I know that that's been a pain point in the past, right? So whether you are an Apple, Penguin, you know, Redmond user, it doesn't matter, right, including the elephant, right? Regardless of what you're using, the device can handle it, right? Hadoop Analytics, right? Test Dev, next-gen apps, containers, and new to the platform, or new to OneFS, is actually S3 protocol. So now you can actually write to the box and move data to the box using the S3 protocol, right? So regardless of who you are, as a user, an architect, an editor, developer, or sysadmin, you have everything you need in this platform to store that data. So just like we talked about being able to handle the edge, core, and cloud with the PowerStore, it's the same story here. You can have this device deployed at the edge, and it can handle all that streaming data, right? So if you're creating lots and lots of unstructured data, then the box can certainly do that. You can then move that data to the core and process it in a centralized data center, right? And that can all be done very easily, very seamlessly to allow customers to scale that out. We can actually add nodes to existing clusters. So you see here, you've got the ISILON at the bottom, and we're sliding in PowerStore nodes on top. It is powered by OneFS, right? So there's compatibility there. Key here is simple, simple, simple. One person is able to manage very, very large environments. And this isn't just marketing fluff, right? This is legit. Like, we have customers with large unstructured data environments, and they don't have teams of IT people managing them, right? It's typically, you know, one person owns that environment, and they're able to control it very efficiently and very effectively. The other thing is cloud. You know, much like PowerStore and the ability to tier out to public cloud providers, if that's where you want to send your data, we have the same capability here in PowerScale, right? So you can tier data off, you can create policies based on how you want to do your data replication, and you can move all those things out to other cloud resources. So again, you know, some customers now have looked at their large repositories and said, there's probably data here that I'm no longer touching, no longer analyzing. Should I continue to take up space on my, ISILON, or in this case, PowerScale, or should I look at tearing that data off somewhere else, maybe to Glacier in AWS, right, a deep archive, and pay, pennies on the dollar. So those kinds of things are capable with this platform and with the software. So we talked a little bit about how the software allows you insight to your data. Well, that's where the Data IQ piece comes in, right? So Data IQ will allow you to look across your different assets and understand what the data is, right? Who's accessing what, how old is it, right? You can actually program or write to Data IQ, right, to be able to discover things, understand things, and then take action, right? Maybe you're going to tear stuff out, right? Move it from one tier to another tier. Maybe you're going to move it to the cloud, right? Data IQ gives you that single pane of glass that allows you to basically understand what's going on in all of the unstructured data and make intelligent decisions on where you want to move that data to. So that, in essence, is what we want to talk about today. We covered PowerMax, the enterprise offering, the high-end storage offering that has been used in some of the largest environments since the end of time, or the beginning of time, excuse me. I actually, I spent 10 years at EMC in my past, and I actually spent the beginning of those 10 years in SIM engineering, so I still have a little bit of a connection to the PowerMax because I worked on some of the early editions there. PowerStore we covered next, which is quickly creeping its way up into PowerMax territory with the flexibility it brings and the availability that it offers. It's a pretty powerful platform. And of course, the apps on stuff, which is out of this world, the ability to actually run a virtual machine directly on the array, that opens up a lot of possibilities on the edge. And then finally, we covered PowerScale. So if you're being inundated with lots of unstructured data, PowerScale is a solution that can help you handle that without having to worry about the management of it on the back end.